I didn't catch her in bed with another man. That would have been easier. Instead, I found out she was living a second emotional life, while I was paying the bills, cleaning the house, and convincing myself love was supposed to feel this exhausting. We still said, "I love you," but somewhere between the dishes and the silence, I had already lost her. The house that slowly turned quiet. When we moved in together in early 2024, I thought we were crossing one of those invisible life milestones people talk about like it's sacred, the kind that separates dating from building a future. New keys, new couch, a shared grocery list on the fridge. I remember standing in the doorway of that house the first night, boxes stacked like poorly built towers, and thinking, this is it. This is what growing up looks like. We were both 25. We'd already been together long enough to joke that we'd spent more than a fifth of our lives side by side. That kind of history does something dangerous. It makes you assume endurance equals destiny. At first, everything felt almost cinematic. Late-night takeout on the floor, music echoing off bare walls, her laughter bouncing through rooms that didn't yet feel lived in. But the thing about movies is they cut the boring parts. Real life doesn't. The boring parts started small. So small I didn't even register them as problems, just adjustments. I cooked because I got home earlier. I cleaned because clutter made me anxious. I paid more because I earned a little more. That's what partners do, right? I told myself it was temporary, that once we settled in, things would balance out. But balance never came. Weeks passed, then months. The dishes became mine by default. The groceries somehow always ran out when I wasn't home. The bills quietly shifted toward my account. And when I brought it up, gently at first, her tone changed. Not angry, not defensive, worse, dismissive. She'd tilt her head, soften her voice, and say things like, "You're just stressed. You're reading too much into it. Why do you always turn things into problems?" I started to feel like every concern I raised had to go through a courtroom before it was allowed to exist. And I was always the one on trial. When love starts sounding like an argument. Arguments weren't explosive. They were circular. I'd explain how overwhelmed I felt. She'd tell me she felt attacked. I'd say I needed more effort from her. She'd say I was making her feel like she wasn't enough. By the end, somehow I was apologizing. Not because I was wrong, but because I was tired. That's when I noticed the pattern. Every disagreement ended the same way. My feelings got reframed as accusations, her accountability dissolved into emotion, and resolution meant silence, not change. And I hated myself for noticing it, because noticing meant I couldn't unsee it. I started choosing my battles carefully. Then I started avoiding them altogether. We'd sit on opposite ends of the couch, both scrolling on our phones, occasionally sharing a meme like roommates trying to prove they still got along. We still slept in the same bed, but intimacy began to feel procedural. I remember lying awake one night, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to her breathe, and thinking, if nothing changes, this is just my life now. That thought scared me more than being alone. The night I finally said I might move out, everything shifted. Suddenly she listened. Suddenly she cried. Suddenly she understood everything I'd been saying for months. For a few days she changed. She cleaned, she cooked, she asked how I was feeling. And I wanted so badly to believe it. But habits don't dissolve overnight. Within a week, we were right back where we started. Only now I knew how quickly she could change and how easily she chose not to. That's when the distance became permanent. I stopped explaining, stopped arguing,
stopped hoping. I didn't know it yet, but by the time I emotionally checked out, she had already started checking in to someone else.
Living with someone who was already leaving. The scariest part wasn't the fighting. It was how quiet everything became after. No slammed doors, no raised voices, no dramatic ultimatums, just distance. We lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, ate dinner at the same table, but emotionally, it felt like we were on opposite sides of a thick glass wall. I could see her, hear her, touch her, but I couldn't reach her. She started staying on her phone more. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Everyone scrolls. Everyone texts. It's 2024. Phones are basically extensions of our hands. But there was a difference. She smiled at her phone in a way she didn't smile at me anymore. Not a laugh, not a joke, a soft, private smile. The kind you don't perform, the kind that just happens. I noticed it one night while I was washing dishes. The kitchen light reflected off the screen in her hands, and I caught her face in the window glass. Her shoulders relaxed, her eyes softened. I realized something that made my stomach drop. She hadn't looked at me like that in months. I told myself not to spiral, not to become paranoid, not to be that guy. After all, I had already emotionally checked out in some ways too. I wasn't fighting anymore. I wasn't begging for change. I had accepted that this relationship was running on fumes. But still, something felt off. She'd take her phone into the bathroom. She'd turn it face down when she sat next to me. She'd reply to messages instantly, but take hours to respond to mine if we weren't in the same room. When I asked how her day was, her answers were short. When she asked about mine, it felt automatic, like muscle memory, not interest. We became experts at pretending. Pretending nothing was wrong. Pretending we weren't drifting. Pretending love didn't feel like a chore. Some nights she'd fall asleep scrolling. I'd lie there awake, staring at the ceiling again, feeling that same tightness in my chest. Only this time, the thought wasn't, if nothing changes, this is my life. It was, I think she's already gone. The moment reality snapped. I didn't snoop. I need to say that clearly, not to justify myself, but because it matters. I didn't go through her phone secretly. I didn't check her messages behind her back. I didn't follow her or interrogate her. The truth came to me without asking. It was a random afternoon. Ordinary. Boring. The kind of day that shouldn't change your life. She left her phone on the couch while she showered. It buzzed. Once. Then again. Then again. I wasn't trying to look, but when something vibrates 3 times in under 10 seconds, your eyes naturally go there. I saw the name. Not one I recognized. No heart emoji, no nickname. Just a name. And under it, a preview. I can't stop thinking about last night. My body reacted before my brain did. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. My ears started ringing like I'd stood up too fast. I stared at the phone like it might bite me. I remember thinking, there's probably an explanation. That's the thing about love. It teaches you how to lie to yourself convincingly. When she came out of the bathroom, towel around her hair, humming softly, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mouth felt glued shut. She picked up her phone, and then I saw it. The split-second pause. Barely noticeable, but I noticed. Her eyes flicked to my face, then back to the screen. Then she locked it. That pause told me everything. Later that night, I asked her, not aggressively, not accusingly, just quietly, "Is there something you need to tell me?" She froze. Not confused, not defensive, frozen. And in that silence, I knew. She sat down across from me, took a deep breath, then another. Her voice was shaky but controlled, like she had rehearsed this in her head. She told me about him, a guy she met recently, someone who understood her, someone she connected with emotionally. They texted all day, every day. Good morning texts, updates about their routines, inside jokes, fantasies about things they'd like to do together. Then she said the part that still echoes in my head. We kissed a few times. My heart sank. And we slept together. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Then she rushed to clarify, almost panicking. No, sex. We didn't have sex. We just slept, like, together. I don't know which part hurt more, that she did it, or that she thought the technicality mattered. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at the floor, trying to process how my life had just split into before and after. She kept talking, saying she didn't think it would hurt me this much, saying she was struggling to communicate her feelings, saying she didn't plan for it to go this far. All I could think was, you planned it every time you picked up your phone. She said she still loved me, that this wasn't us ending, that it was a mistake, out of character. I wanted to scream, because nothing about it felt out of character. It felt like the inevitable result of everything I'd been trying to talk about for months. Still, knowing that didn't make it hurt less. That night, after hours of talking in circles, I packed a bag. I went back to my parents' house, and for the first time in a long time, I slept alone.
Healing didn't mean I stopped loving her. Moving back into my parents' house felt like time travel. Same hallway, highlight marks still etched into the door frame from when I was a kid, the same smell of detergent that never quite left the walls. It was safe, predictable, and humiliating. At 25, I was supposed to be building something forward, not retreating to the place I learned how to ride a bike. But at the same time, it was the first place I'd felt peace in months. No tension in the air, no half arguments, no walking on emotional glass, just silence. The first few nights, I slept like my body had been waiting years for permission to shut down. No dreams, no overthinking, just deep, heavy rest. During the day, though, everything came back. Her texts started almost immediately. At first, they were long, paragraphs, apologies layered on top of explanations, layered on top of regret. She told me she had cut contact with him, that she hated herself, that she'd ruined everything. Then came the calls, then the voice notes, then the, "Can we please talk? I can't live like this." I didn't respond at first, not out of cruelty, out of confusion. Because here was the part nobody warns you about. You can be emotionally exhausted and still in love at the same time. I had spent the last months of our relationship feeling numb, unheard, drained. I'd even thought, quietly, that I might not love her anymore. But the moment I found out she cheated, the pain hit so hard it rewired something in my chest. It didn't make sense. How could losing someone I felt distant from hurt this much? The answer was simple and brutal. I wasn't out of love. I was out of energy. And there's a difference. The relapse. After about 2 weeks, I agreed to see her. Just once, just to talk. That's what I told myself. She looked wrecked. Eyes swollen, dark circles. That confident posture she used to carry had collapsed inward. She hugged herself like she didn't know where to put her arms. Seeing her like that broke something in me. She cried a lot. She told me she couldn't eat, that she couldn't sleep, that she replayed my face the night I found out over and over in her head. She said, "I didn't think it would hit you this hard." That sentence landed like a slap. not because it was cruel, but because it revealed how disconnected she'd been from me long before the betrayal. We talked for hours about us, about the house, about how things went wrong. She took responsibility, at least verbally, admitted she had been selfish, avoidant, emotionally immature, and when she reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. That's the thing about familiar pain. It's easier to sit in than unknown healing. We ended up having sex that night. It was intense, emotional, confusing. For a moment, it felt like everything snapped back into place, like this whole thing had been a nightmare and we were waking up. Then I went back to my parents' house, and the clarity crashing down. The guilt, the doubt, the hollow feeling in my stomach. It felt like taking a painkiller for a broken bone. Temporary relief, long-term damage. This pattern repeated. We'd meet, talk, cry, sleep together, laugh over dinner like nothing happened. Then I'd leave and the anxiety would come back stronger every time. I realized something terrifying. I wasn't healing. I was postponing the pain. The moment everything shifted. One night, lying in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling I'd stared at 1,000 times before, I asked myself a question I'd been avoiding. If nothing changed, could I trust her again? Not hypothetically, not romantically, realistically. I pictured the future, living together again, her phone lighting up, that pause before she locks it, and I knew no amount of apologies could erase what had already been wired into my nervous system. Trust, once fractured, doesn't shatter loudly. It leaks, and it poisons everything slowly. That's when the anger finally arrived. Not explosive rage, something colder, clearer. I realized she wasn't fighting for me, she was fighting for comfort, for familiarity, for the version of life where she didn't have to face consequences. And I realized something else, something uncomfortable. If I just walked away quietly, she would always frame this as a mutual hard time or a mistake that could have been fixed. She would never fully understand what she lost, not because she was evil, but because she never had to feel absence the way I did. And that's when the idea formed. Not revenge in the dramatic sense. No yelling, no exposure, no cruelty. Just truth. Delayed. Calculated. I decided to let her believe, just for a little while, that she still had a chance. The revenge plan. Quiet version. I stopped pushing her away. I became calm, present, reflective. I asked questions, listened carefully. I let her open up fully. About him, about us, about her fears. And the more she talked, the more I understood something that would later change everything. She hadn't cheated because she fell in love. She cheated because she couldn't stand being seen clearly. And soon, she was going to see me more clearly than ever before.
The truth she didn't expect. I didn't rush it. That was the key. For weeks, I stayed calm, measured, thoughtful. I didn't punish her with silence, and I didn't reward her with certainty. I became grounded, and that confused her more than anger ever could. We met regularly. Coffee, walks, dinners, occasionally sex. Slower now, quieter, almost nostalgic. She clung to those moments like proof that she hadn't lost me completely. But something had changed. I stopped reassuring her. No, it'll be okay. No, we'll figure it out. When she asked where we stood, I'd say, I'm still figuring that out. And for the first time, she was the anxious one. One night, while we were sitting in her car after dinner, she said something that unlocked everything. She said, almost casually, I think what happened with him made me realize how much I actually love you.
I turned and looked at her. Really looked at her. And that's when I felt it. Not anger, not sadness. Clarity. I asked her something I hadn't asked before. Do you think you would have chosen me if I hadn't found out? She didn't answer right away. She looked out the windshield, bit her lip, shrugged slightly. I don't know. That was it. That was the twist. Because in that moment, I realized something devastatingly simple. I wasn't chosen. I was recovered. I was the safe place she returned to once excitement failed to replace stability. And suddenly, every memory rearranged itself. Her dismissiveness, her emotional distance, her ability to justify crossing lines. She didn't betray me because she was lost. She betrayed me because she assumed I'd still be there. That's when I knew what I had to do. The moment of truth. A few days later, I asked her to meet me. Not casually, not emotionally, intentionally. We sat across from each other, and I told her everything, calmly, clearly, without accusation. I told her how exhausted I had been, how unheard, how alone I felt before she ever cheated. I told her I loved her, because that was true. Then I told her the part she didn't expect. I forgive you, I said. Her eyes lit up instantly, but I didn't stop. I forgive you, I repeated, but I don't choose you anymore. Her face collapsed. I explained that love without trust turns into self-betrayal, that staying would mean shrinking myself to keep the peace, that every time she'd pick up her phone, I'd relive it. And I refused to live like that. She cried harder than I'd ever seen her cry. She told me she'd do anything, therapy, time, space, whatever I needed. And that's when the final line landed. I needed you to choose me before you lost me. That was the revenge, not destruction. Finality.
The quiet after the storm. The first weeks after cutting contact were brutal. Not dramatic, just heavy. I missed her laugh, her smell, the version of us that used to exist. But something else grew in that space. Peace. No more anxiety spirals, no more second-guessing my worth, no more emotional negotiations. She tried reaching out a few times, then stopped. I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling. Therapy, regret, self-reflection. And for the first time, that wasn't my responsibility. Love isn't enough, and that's okay. We had good times, real ones. She wasn't a villain, I wasn't perfect, but love isn't just about feeling. It's about choice, effort, and respect. And when those disappear, love becomes a memory, not a foundation. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was the first honest thing I'd done for myself in a long time. And that was the real ending. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story taught me anything, it's that love without respect slowly destroys you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone you still love. If this story hit home, there's another one waiting for you.